Coming up in today's newscast, the Israeli Prime Minister reveals shocking new Israeli intelligence on live television. Argentina's national soccer team scores a goal against BDS, and new Israeli tech is about to travel to the final frontier. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us. Prime Minister Netanyahu has just made a shocking and dramatic speech on live primetime television, revealing what he claims are thousands of documents taken from Iran's nuclear facilities in Tehran. For the Israeli leader, the data within these files is proof enough that the current deal with Iran is a no-go, revealing Iran's detailed research in 2003 to develop nuclear weapons.
A few weeks ago, in a great intelligence achievement, Israel obtained half a ton of the material inside these vaults. And here's what we got. 55,000 pages, another 55,000 files on 183 CDs. Everything you're about to see is an exact copy of the original Iranian material.
Israeli officials say this is a result of one of the most successful Mossad ops of all time. Allegedly, this trove was taken from the Atomic Archive in Tehran and smuggled back to Israel all within the same night. In a shocking PowerPoint presentation, Netanyahu walked TV audiences through some of the contents, which contained detailed blueprints, pictures, and even video clips, supposedly documenting Iran's progress in developing nukes about 15 years ago. Iranian leaders have shrugged off the prime minister's claims, calling him the boy who cried wolf. Despite this dramatic reveal, Israeli and European leaders say Netanyahu's data actually works against him and proves the current nuclear deal is needed to stop Iran's plans. Furthermore, Israel's former Mossad official Gad Shimron has slammed Netanyahu's decision to share top Israeli intel publicly on primetime TV, possibly endangering agents' lives. Some argue that Netanyahu only proved what the world already knew and failed to show any evidence at all that Iran was violating the current deal by trying to develop nuclear weapons now. Still, it's possible that the Prime Minister's true intended audience heard him loud and clear. The White House says this intelligence presents new and compelling details that will absolutely impact President Trump's decision on the deal. The president has less than 2 weeks to make his final call.
So no, if anything, it's proven right what Israel has done today with the news conference. And Prime Minister Netanyahu just gave a very, I don't know if everybody's seen it, but I got to see a little bit of it. And that is just not an acceptable situation. And I've been saying that's happening. They're not sitting back idly. They're setting off missiles, which they say are for television purposes. I don't think so. So we'll see what happens. I'm not telling you what I'm doing, but a lot of people think they know. And on or before the 12th, we'll make a decision.
Well, here with more on Prime Minister Netanyahu's bombshell revelations is Brigadier General Nitzan Nuriel, the former director of the Israeli Counterterrorism Bureau and an associate at the International Institute for Counterterrorism at IDC Herzliya. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, so one of the biggest criticisms that we're seeing against this revelation was that nothing new was actually revealed. Do you agree that there's still no smoking gun that Netanyahu has really presented to the world, or that there is anything new to present?
We are trying to speak about fact, and the facts are that we cannot prove that the Iranian did something since they signed the deal. So all the information we had yesterday and all the information we have is still from 2015 and backward.
Well, there are also, Mossad officials that are saying that this revealing of information was kind of at risk to Israeli agents, and it's endangered many. Is that fair?
Yes, it's fair enough to say that anytime we or people that works for us are working behind the lines in Iran or other places that are under a risk, this is kind of the magic way we are taking or conduct operations, and this is part of the life.
Now, let's talk a little bit about how Iran has responded to this publicly and what we think is going to happen in the future. Is there going to be a bigger response and that Israel's just crying wolf here?
I think that the Iranian has a biggest problem with us upon all those foreign sources that Israel keep attacking Iranian targets in Syria. So first they have to consider what to do with that before they start saying or asking, what do we do with the Israeli undercover operation that steal our archive? Right. The main problem they have is what to do with those Israeli attacks against Iranian targets in Syria.
Now, let's assume that Netanyahu does get what he wants, which is obviously for the Iran deal to be nixed and taken off the table completely. What next? What needs to happen to stop Iran from continuing its work?
Based on the past, only very strong international cooperation that press Iran back into the table can change something. The United States by itself cannot change the picture. If the European state, Russia and China will stay in that agreement, then the US decisions, it's almost meaningless.
Interesting. All right. Well, I guess I'd like to kind of hear your perspective in terms of what Israel needs to do right now. What is the next step for Israel? And obviously, kind of what is the near future that's going to happen here? Because we feel this risk. It feels so imminent. But is it truly imminent?
Generally speaking, we have three main things to do. First, to make sure that we have the capabilities to make sure that Iran will never get a nuclear weapons. This is number one. Number two is to take all the actions needed in order to make sure that the Iranian will not build up military capabilities in Syria.
Right.
And last but not least, to make sure that Hezbollah keep his behavior and do not challenge our systems.
All right. Well, I think that obviously everybody here is kind of at the edge of their seats in terms of what is going to happen next, and we're waiting to hear from U.S. President Donald Trump as well. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right. In potentially related news, and mere hours after Netanyahu's bombshell speech on primetime TV, the Knesset has just voted to grant the prime minister new emergency powers. Netanyahu will now legally be able to declare war without requiring a cabinet vote in situations that are deemed extreme. Ayal TV's Brett Allen Smith is here with more. And Brett, obviously the big question here is, how does this new law define what is extreme and what isn't extreme?
Right. That's the thing, really, Natasha. It doesn't really. The wording of the law is pretty vague on how it defines such a scenario. Some people say purposely vague, perhaps. In the past, the sitting prime minister would need approval from the entire cabinet to bring the country into war, but now he can do so in certain cases after consulting only with the defense minister. So obviously this is a pretty major, significant change in what a prime minister can and can't do.
Now, this law has been up for debate for quite a while now, but even given what's happening, with many bracing for a war with Iran, it still kind of feels like this law was snuck under the radar in a way and kind of took people by surprise.
Sure. Look, it's hard to ignore the timing of this, especially since the Knesset, only just a couple days ago returned from recess to begin the summer session. This bill was actually one of the first things on the summer agenda, and I think it almost goes without saying by now, but, like many Israeli laws, this one is very controversial. While the Knesset voted 62 against 41 to pass the bill, opponents include top former IDF commanders, and you'd think that career Army guys would be all up for this idea, but actually they're kind of totally against it. Like others, they're kind of worried that now Netanyahu can essentially make a big decision of literal life and death with almost zero oversight.
Yeah, and I understand those criticisms. This type of emergency power is pretty rare.
Sure.
Typically, it's only granted to leaders temporarily during times of war, and this law permanently changes the powers of a prime minister, and still with rumors very high of a war with Iran. If President Trump dismantles a nuclear deal, this could actually be good timing now that the bill is passed.
Well, it's hard. Look, it's hard to say. Sure, if Iran did start an act of aggression that threatened Israeli sovereignty, I think the entire cabinet would unanimously support going to war. No problem there. But remember, Israel is a country that typically does not begin wars. Now, it certainly has in the past, but not always, which means that if Netanyahu wants to launch a war preemptively, this law would potentially give him the power to do that. Though again, with the interpretation of that, that extreme circumstances kind of gray zone clause, this law could lead us into potentially murky waters.
Yeah, especially because things in the Middle East always feel like they're already extreme circumstances, and also because in Israel, almost every single person serves in the military
and
here.
Everything changes fast.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Brett.
Of course.
New details are emerging in the ongoing investigation of last week's tragic hike. 10 teenagers in the Bnei Zion Pre-Army Academy were killed while hiking on a school-sponsored trip in the Negev. This was a day after intense off-season rains turned the entire area into a dangerous disaster zone. But for reasons that are still unclear to police, the school's instructors told students everything was fine and proceeded with the field trip anyway. At this time, the Academy's principal, Yuval Kahan, and instructor Aviv Bardichev are suspected of criminal negligence. Word is that Bardichev actually faces a more severe charge of manslaughter because he allegedly had more details on just how dangerous the weather would be. The two suspects have currently been released on house arrest, and the principal has said he plans to personally reach out to the victims' families. Police raided the grounds of the Bnei Zion school earlier this week when police suspected that the school was attempting to obstruct the investigation. In a WhatsApp message to the hikers shortly before the trip, they assured students that the highest authorities had given the green light despite weather warnings. Both the Defense Ministry and the Ministry of Education deny any knowledge that such a trip was even planned. Some students even specifically warned organizers against embarking on such a dangerous trip, warnings that unfortunately fell on deaf ears. Well, if you're a fan of soccer, or should I say football, then we have some fantastic news. Argentina's national team, the two-time world champ, is heading to the Holy Land for a friendly match just 1 week before the 2018 World Cup. Now, this is a big deal because the game is directly defying the BDS movement. And here for more details is Ayal TV's Latin American correspondent, Joy Gavichon.
Thanks, Natasha. So, this is a major defeat for the BDS movement, which seeks to block countries from any exchange of arts, goods, or even dialogue with Israel. Now, BDS activists in Latin America were lobbying very hard to stop Argentina's national team from coming to the Holy Land for the match, with a campaign under the motto, Argentina, don't go.
But clearly both the team and the owners disagree, right?
Yes. Despite the letters that the boycott organizers sent to the team stars, they decided to come after all. And also it looks like they may have forgotten that soccer legend Lionel Messi, who plays for Argentina's national team and just won the Spanish league with Barcelona, is actually a brand ambassador for a startup company based here in Israel.
Yeah, well, I mean, lucky for us, we're going to get the chance to see some soccer figures, even though the game is mostly a friendly game, right?
Yeah, that's right. After they play against Israel, the team will pack their bags and fly straight to Russia, where fans are hoping that Messi can help snag Argentina the gold at the 2018 World Cup. And hopefully the Israeli opponents will give them a proper warm-up before the big day.
Yeah, I like that you say warm-up because we personally are hoping that Argentina is going to win, but we won't get into the specifics of that.
Yes, but now my question is, who are you going to be rooting for?
Well, like I said, Argentina comes #1, and then we can go from there and see who else. But you know, the last World Cup, it was a big upset when Argentina just wasn't able to clinch that World Cup. A lot of people were crying. And I'm sure for many Israelis, it's going to be really hard to pick which team to root for, especially after they see the team play on June 9th. So for those who want to make sure that they have the chance to watch, tune in. And thanks for the details, Joy.
Thank you.
All right, one of the most devastating and mysterious causes of death among newborn babies is SIDS, or sudden infant death syndrome, which is also known as crib death. Now, for years, doctors have been unable to fully understand what exactly causes crib death, but now Israeli scientists believe they may have a shocking new insight into the syndrome, and it's all thanks to an unlikely source, the common zebrafish. Though the number of victims of crib death has been somewhat decreasing over the years, the syndrome remains all the more terrifying for parents, especially considering that we know little about what causes it. But the stories are all the same. Otherwise healthy babies are put to bed only to be discovered dead in their cribs the next morning with zero signs of suffocation or even struggle. An Israeli team at Bar Ilan University decided to test sleep patterns, brainwaves, and temperature for an answer. In their search for a test animal, they discovered the zebrafish. Unlike humans, zebrafish are cold-blooded, meaning their body temperature is identical to the temperature of their environment. This proved to be an essential piece of the puzzle, as the team soon found that temperature indeed has a direct link to certain brain patterns during sleep. These patterns, called neuronal noise, are a phenomenon found in brain cells where nerve voltage changes randomly across brain channels. The team found that rising temperatures cause neuronal noise to decrease, which in turn caused some of the body's life-saving functions to also decrease during sleep. This is a hypothesis that still needs a lot more testing to completely nail down, but if these scientists are on the right path, it could mean a life-saving breakthrough is just around the corner.
There is nothing worse than all the time that's wasted when your car engine breaks down or when you're stuck on the tarmac in a plane that just isn't functioning well. Well, an Israeli company called Celtic has figured out how to cut down on this very issue. And joining us now is the CEO and founder, Jeremy Brabet Adonajlo. Quite the name. I got it. All right. All right. So what does your company do? Tell us about it.
So basically, we're a part of Hangar Labs, which is Israeli aerospace industry innovation program. And we're working with them to reduce the downtime by enabling the technician to very quickly know on which part they are working on, instead of searching in the books and so on. So they picture the parts and they know what is this part and they can get more information.
And they can do that with their phone, essentially?
So right now with a tablet, because it's a professional environment,
okay,
but a phone is also possible.
And have you been using this mechanical system for cars or planes? Kind of what do you deal with the most?
So right now with Israeli aerospace, it's obviously a plane, but we're also making tests with a major German automotive manufacturer, and here more in logistic. And basically it can be relevant anywhere where you have a complex mechanical system and very expensive downtime. So it can be energy sector, it can be pretty much everything.
Well, yeah, and I mean, obviously this is a huge cost saver, but I can also, just like I said, imagine how much time would be saved by having an app of sorts that you could literally just figure out immediately what the issue is,
and
right?
It's also great to enable, for instance, people that are less trained to be as efficient as those that has more experience.
Right. Oh, very interesting. All right, so where you said already that it's being used with planes, right?
Yes.
And it's going to be used soon with cars coming to.
So with the car logistic, to be precise.
All right, very cool. So that's what's next. Thank you so much for joining us and telling us about this technology.
Thank you for inviting us.
I hope this really is a future of, solving our broken down cars. I could use it. Thanks for joining us. All right, next year, NASA's unmanned Orion spacecraft will blast off into space on a mission that'll take it further than any human has ever traveled before. And get this, it looks like an Israeli passenger is going to be going along for the ride when Orion rockets off into space for its 280,000-mile mission. Well, sort of. Sitting in the ship's cockpit will be a mannequin wearing a brand new anti-radiation space vest developed right here in Tel Aviv. The tech startup STEMRAD, who we've actually interviewed before, crafted this cutting-edge vest to protect passengers from all kinds of radiation that astronauts face in space travel. The AstroRad, as it's called, shields organs that are especially prone to radiation, like our lungs, stomach, colon, and for women, their breasts and ovaries. This test prototype for the Orion is actually specifically designed for female spacegoers, and the flight will evaluate just how effectively the Israeli-made tech blocks radiation from the human body. Orion will be in space for nearly 3 weeks before returning back to Earth, but hopes are already high that this vest might open up new doors for human space travel. Israel's space agency is apparently already planning to test the vest on actual astronauts stationed in the International Space Station in 2019. Aerospace specialists are optimistic that this tech could very well be key to helping the next generation of astronauts make another small step for man, and this time on Mars. Well, if you've ever been a bride, a bridesmaid, had a cousin get married, heck, even if you're a guy, then you know that finding the perfect wedding dress is no small thing. Women all over the world agonize over tracking down a dress that captures who they are while balancing the particular style they have or tradition of their wedding. Well, guess what, brides? If you're looking for that extra wow factor, you should be looking right here in Israel.
Israeli wedding dress designers have emerged as some of the world's most exciting creators. Their work blends style, sincerity, and tradition, sometimes with a little kick to step things up a notch. Celebrities like Beyonce and Serena Williams have famously donned Israeli-designed dresses at their weddings. And word has it that Meghan Markle is scoping Israel's top designers for her royal wedding gown, too. Israeli and Jewish culture is obviously very family-oriented and thus very wedding-oriented. So it only makes sense that Israeli-made gowns have finally made their way to the highest tier of wedding fashion. Designers like Mira Zwillinger, Inbal Dror, and Galia Lahav have spearheaded the tidal wave of Israeli designs. Their work tends to feature wonderful embellishments on the classic white wedding dress, throwing in a unique twist in either form or fabric to make it truly unforgettable. No wonder so many women all over the world take one look at these dresses and say those two little words, I do.
The Mosaic Theater, or Teatron Psifaso, in Jerusalem has a long-standing tradition of creating plays that draw on Jewish themes, history, and religion. Well, now a theater group of Orthodox Jewish women is preparing to take the Psifaso Theater by storm. And joining me with the details is director of the Jewish Orthodox Women's Theater, Sonia Sudri. Thanks for joining us. All right, Sonia, so tell me about the women's theater group. Why only ultra-Orthodox women?
Yes, because I was before I was an actress. An actress in the National Theatre in France, you know. And when I began to be a religious woman, I thought that it was impossible for me to continue my job.
Right, because there just wasn't kind of a place for Orthodox women to act.
You know, after some years, I married and I had children. I came to Israel. It was wonderful. But all the night, I dreamed. What I dreamed that I was actress, that I was in the stage. And perhaps that I forgot my lines, or perhaps there was no audience.
So you created this group. Now
it was terrible. As I I felt perhaps another woman had the same dream.
Clearly you were right, because you have this women's theater group right now for ultra-Orthodox women specifically. Now, what types of performances are you working on?
Yes, as I decided to open a school, and it was a great success. Yeah. Now I have two schools, one in Bnei Brak, one in Jerusalem, and the women learned to be actress.
Right.
Learn to teach, learn to be director, to sing, to move, to play. And I saw that the student advanced and progressed. I said to myself, oh good, I have to open a theater.
Yeah, well, how many women are in the theater now?
The theater, we have 8, 10 women.
Beautiful.
Yes,
well, listen, I mean, it's amazing that you've created an outlet for these women to perform. And thank you so much for joining us and telling us about this.
Okay.
All right. One of the greatest soccer players in the world, Brazil's Ronaldinho, has just visited Israel for a whirlwind week-long trip. The man is basically a living legend. Ronaldinho has been named FIFA's World Player of the Year twice, and he's even snagged the prestigious Ballon d'Or. Well, even though the sports idol is now 38 and has retired from the game, he's still imparting his soccer knowledge on the next generation. Ronaldinho has just announced he's opening a new soccer academy right here in Israel.
The school is set to open this summer, first as a camp and then as a full-fledged soccer academy. And considering it comes with the pedigree of a man considered to be one of the greatest players of all time, this will obviously be quite the experience. Training is open for youths aged 6 to 16. The Ronaldinho Soccer Academy will be based in Jerusalem, and the idea is to include students from all faiths and backgrounds in order to teach way more than just soccer skills. Ronaldinho says the school offers tools for life, discipline, and teamwork, making Israel the perfect place to set up shop. The Brazilian athlete is Christian himself and affiliates himself with an evangelical religious-oriented party in Brazil. For him, this only adds to the honor of having his own soccer school in the Holy Land.
Here comes our Hebrew word of the day. An Israeli-made radiation vest is about to blast off into space on NASA's Orion spacecraft next year. So today's word is chalalit, which is how you say a rocket ship in Hebrew. Come on, who hasn't dreamed of exploring outer space in a chalalit or a rocket ship? Chalaliyot, or rocket ships, are big, fast, and made to take us where no humans have gone before. But get this, in a few years, we might be able to book a ticket on a chalalit ride the same way you buy an airplane ticket. The future really is now. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be warm but partly cloudy with a chance of rain. The low should be around 73 or 23 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect the skies to clear up and the high to be about 90 or 32 degrees Celsius. Wow. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.62 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.